Good day everyone. Today we'll be taking a look at the Gran Columbia Revolution, aka the revolution that you pick if you're going to be on a water map, because as soon as you revolt with this revolution, you get 2 ironclads, which is a pretty good deal. Also you get super musketeers and half-pop lancers, but we'll go over all of that in just a moment. First things first, let's have a look at the cards. Now the first card that you have is your Lineros card, which sends 10 Lineros and 10 cattle. The next card is going to be your cattle drivers card, which will send 1 Linero, 1 homestead wagon, and 8 cattle. Next up, you have the infinite 4 Gatling, as well as the infinite 2 ironclads after that, followed up by your infinite fortress card. Then you have your standard run-of-the-mill citizenship card, which sends 6 citizens, and citizens now cost 70 coin to train. After that, you have an interesting mercenary card that gives you 2 Highlanders, 2 Harquebusers, and 2 Jaegers. And then last but not least, you have a card that sends Simon Bolivar. But first, let's circle back and have a look at those Lineros. On the surface, this revolution will look like a lot of other revolutions. You'll get your outlaw type units and you'll start to run your cowboy economy, and you might not even notice for a hot second that these aren't dragoon type units, these are lancer type units. But just like the other units, they can gather from livestock and do all that stuff. However, the Lineros act like lancers. Lineros fill a necessary role as a fast-moving, hard-hitting way to chase down all of the units that your Independence Guard are too slow to catch. Compared to most other revolutions you have as Spain, Gran Columbia sort of flips the script. Usually you're used to having your infantry revolutionaries to counter other infantry, and your Comanchero like ranged cheap dragoons to counter cavalry. However, with Gran Columbia, instead you get the Independence Guard super musketeers to counter cavalry, and then you get your cavalry cheap lancers, your Lineros, to counter infantry. So that is one interesting twist with this revolution that sets it apart from the other revolutions. And if one type of super musketeer wasn't enough, you can also get more Highlanders via your mercenary shipment, which will send your 2 Highlanders, your 2 Jaegers, and your 2 Harquebusers. So that will add even more force to the giant mass that you're building up with all of those super musketeers. This revolution plays with more of a hammer and anvil concept, where your super musketeers and your mercenaries can act as the anvil, while your Lineros can come in to act as the hammer. If you want, you can also pull off the Harquebusers from your free 6 mercenaries and throw those in with your Lineros to add a little bit of range firepower to your mobile hammer. Now back to the anvil. Your Independence Guard type units can be trained by this revolution's Simon Bolivar, so you can reinforce them in the middle of battle, so you don't have to be shy about casualties. On top of that, they will by default have 15% more health at the cost of moving 15% slower. And if you send the church upgrade card for the Spanish, you can then research the Corselet, which will reduce speed by 15% but increase their hit points by 25%, coming around to making the Independence Guard 30% slower than normal musketeers, but with 40% more health, plus more health if you have unction on, making these super musketeers the perfect guard for your cannons. Furthermore, the nature of their unique units actually works out rather well with the nature of them being a maritime revolution. When you're doing naval landings in Age of Empires 3, your opponent will often have towers, they'll have falconets, or they'll have giant masses of skirmisher type units just waiting for you to come ashore. Independence Guard, once you research the Corselet, if you choose the church card, can have almost 450 hit points if they're boosted by unction. That means that those cannons might not even kill them in one hit. Those masses of skirmishers might only make a dent in half of your formation. And don't forget that once you land your Simon Bolivar, you can quickly replace those losses. On top of that, you can also train more from galleons, and there's a card as the Spanish that you can send that will let you build more military units from any Spanish ship that's close to the shore. So while your Independence Guard are swallowing up all of that enemy fire, you can quickly replace your losses using your ships. On top of that, the Linero will also excel in these situations because it can rush down and take out any infantry that are hiding behind buildings, and since it only costs 1 pop, that frees up more population space for more cannons, for more mortars, and also for more Independence Guard to take all that enemy fire. So when it comes to landing, it's hard to beat the combination of heavy cannons and Independence Guard backed up by support from your ships, and some Lineros to take care of cheeky artillery. And well, you normally think of just masses of falconets being the force that takes down buildings, a giant group of about 50 Independence Guard are pretty good at sieging down buildings as well. And if you have both Simon Bolivar there, as well as Priest as the Spanish to cast that unction effect, then that will make your Independence Guard even more of a nightmare to deal with, especially on a crowded island where there's nowhere to run. Because in such conditions, it doesn't matter that almost any unit in the game can outrun your musketeers. They can't run away if there's nowhere to run away to. And it's in those circumstances that the Independence Guard who have received the Corselet upgrade will truly excel. The Gran Columbia Revolution is known for its wonderful Mimi Super Musketeers. And while those are great, and while it's awesome to train musketeers that almost have as much HP as a Highlander, and only take up 1 pop and only cost 75 food and 25 gold, you shouldn't underestimate their Lineros as well, due to the flexibility given by that melee cavalry. Because a lot of opponents will misjudge what they are, since they look a lot like the normal Dragoon equivalent revolutionary option outlaws. So the opponent won't realize their true nature as an anti-infantry unit until they're already mowing down their skirmishers and stabbing their artillery to death. And they come out to be a very good deal. They have 2/3 of the attack of a normal Lancer and 2/3 of the hit points, but they take up half the population space. So you can take them as your anti-infantry / anti-artillery cavalry option. They'll take up the same population space as a Cossack, letting you enjoy even more infantry and even more artillery to create your musketeer and falconet giant wall of death. So you can roleplay as the British for a second and just spam those musketeers till the enemy goes down. And just like Peru, it should also be mentioned that your Simon Bolivar can also sneak behind the back lines and start training units, only with this revolution is Independence Guard instead of your Peruvian legionaries if you were going Peru. And also the Simon Bolivar of this revolution also acts like a daimyo in that you can send shipments directly to him. So you can just crawl up behind the enemy lines, start training off some Independence musketeers, start training off some Gatlings, and you can effectively flank the enemy by just sneaking a single unit behind. And I don't know about you, but if out of nowhere there were suddenly 50 Highlander strength musketeers showing up in a corner of the map that I didn't even expect to look for an army that size, I would be a little miffed. And I would also be panicking if then on the other side I was suddenly hit by a giant massive units that I thought were Dragoons, but it turns out they're simply Lancer type units that just look like Dragoons. In that regard, Gran Columbia can be obscenely upsetting to your opponent if you pull it off right, and it can be tremendously enjoyable for you once you get the hang of it. So I hope that if you are running the Spanish and you're thinking of what revolution you should choose for a naval map, that you'll consider giving Gran Columbia a try. So go out there, have fun, and build musketeers till you drop.